In this video, we're going to go over the quadratic formula, specifically understanding it and using it. In the next video, we'll go over how to derive it, where it came from. So let's back up a little bit. We've been looking at some quadratic equations already and expanding and factoring. So we've seen things such as this. Now, when you see something that's a quadratic equation, meaning that this is a second power, there's two approaches. You can either try to factor this or try to use the quadratic formula, which was what we're going to go into, which happens to be this monstrous thing over here. So the first thing you should do is ask yourself, is this nice or is this ugly? This looks kind of nice because we can factor this way. So that means x equals -1 or -3. That's an or. Okay, so if you can't see how to factor this pretty quickly, let's say within 10 seconds, then you probably want to go with the quadratic formula. But keep in mind, if you're always just using the formula always works, but if you're using the formula to do this problem, you're using a hammer to kill a fly. So this is too much work to do this problem. So let's just get comfortable with what this says, and then we'll understand what this is really, where this comes from. Okay, so let's try to apply this formula to this problem. So this means that given any equation that's quadratic, meaning there's x squared, possibly some x term and a numbered term, if you want to know the solution, all we need, there's these letters a, b, and c in this formula. So the general quadratic equation is like this. So there's a, b, c, which are the x squared term coefficient, the x term coefficient, and the constant term. So in this case, our a is 1, our b is 4, and our c is 3. So by the way, if this were like a -3, then your c would be -3. It includes the sign before the number. So all we're going to do is try to apply the formula to the same problem, and we better get the same things. All right, so our x is equal to -b. Our b is 4, so this is -4 plus or minus square root of 4 squared, which is 16, minus 4 times 1 times 3, all over 2 times a, which is 1, so that's 2. All right, let's simplify this. 16 minus 12 is 4. The square root of 4 is going to be 2. Now, technically, the square root of 4 can be plus or minus 2, but there's already a plus or minus here, so it doesn't matter which sign we pick. That includes both cases. All right, so -4 plus or minus 2 all over 2. Let's divide both of these by 2 to get rid of this. So that's a 2, and that's a 1. So therefore, our solution is -2 plus 1 or -2 minus 1. So this plus or minus is not an operation. It's really a lazy way of saying the first solution is this plus the square root. The second solution is -b minus the square root. So x is either -2 plus 1, which is -1. -2 minus 1 is -3, which are the same numbers as we got here. But notice how quickly we did this and how much work this took. All right, now another point I want to make. This thing in here is referred to as the discriminant, in case you see it anywhere else. That's not important for you to know, other than just to know what people are talking about. But the fact that this came out to be 4, which is a nice number, it's a perfect square, that's an indication that you missed an easy factoring. So let's say you're like, oh, I can't figure it out, and you get square root of 64, square root of, let's say, 169. Any perfect square, that tells you there was a factoring that you missed. So that's something you can use to polish your factoring skills. All right, so that's how this formula works. Given anything like this, such as so here our a would be -2, b would be -5, and c would be -7. You just plug in these numbers for a, b, c in this formula, and it spits out your 2 answers. All right, so that's how to use it. All right, in the next video, we'll go over understanding the quadratic formula.